This is a good, cool topic, but I love to start a session by explaining what we're going to do and what we're not going to do so that your expectations are clear. And trust me, if this is not what you're expecting, right, and you're expecting something else, I have no jealousy. You can stand up, go to another great session. There's a ton of great sessions for you. Your time is very precious, and I dearly respect it. So let me tell you what we're going to do. I've been kindly speaking for about 12 years about this topic. I've been doing research, and this is pretty much the 12th iteration of this content. In other words, there's nothing in this deck that hasn't been chewed over for quite a while. And all of this has been based on conversations I've had with people deploying. So I also want you to understand that there's not going to be any theory here. There's all practice. But there's no how-to, so I'm not going to show you any demos. So if you're expecting demos of 8.1 or whatever, there's going to be no demos in this session. Because when I went and talked to some of the Fortune 2,000, 5,000 companies in the world, they didn't give me a demo. They told me what they were going to do, and then I saw if they were successful. And if they're successful, I'm going to recommend to you their strategies. And if they weren't, I'm going to tell you I don't recommend that. Is that fair? Is this what you're expecting? Is that what you want? Good stuff. You get a copy of the slides. You don't have to ask for them. They're on the website. They were already there a whole week. And the only thing I ask you is, don't take this topic too religiously, because this has been proven by the Mavericks to be wrong every now and then. Let me explain something. There's one thing that nobody has proven. Nobody has proven that with one hammer you can build a house. Okay? You need a couple more tools. So if your solution for this whole workplace problem that we have, or if some of people still want to call it desktop, I don't agree with that, but if they will still want to call it desktop or mobility or whatever you want to call it, and they say I'm going to solve it with technology A, whatever your preference is to put under A, I would disagree. And the reason is because that's the same thing as saying I'm going to build a house with a hammer. Now some people think that because I say that, they're like, oh, he's against this technology or that. No, I'm not against any tool in the toolbox. I'm against you thinking you're going to solve it with one single tool. Is that fair? So this is a very complex problem, and you are going to solve it with a lot more than one tool. So with that, my name is Eduardo Kastner. I've been working in Microsoft for about 8 years, covering this topic, data center, and now private cloud, as well as data center efficiency. I'm more on the enterprise side of the house. Doesn't mean that I don't talk to small and medium companies. It just means that I tend to focus more on the larger corporations. But I've never seen somebody that has alien problems yet. I just see people having the same problems but on a different scale. And everybody has budget problems. So that one is a common one. Let's start. I have to start with what is your strategy, because I'll tell you something. If I ask you, and not all of you can see me, and this is by strategy and design, I'm a little bit fat. If I ask you how am I going to get thin, and you tell me just do diet, well, I've tried that and it didn't work. Okay? So I'm going to ask you what is your strategy, because trust me, I want you to start thinking on what you want to achieve this year and how you're going to do it. Okay? As opposed to how do I solve the next problem in the next few months and what do I buy? I'll tell you my dumb analogy. I've used this for many years. If you've heard it before from me, I deeply apologize. But understand it's really a good analogy. I have 3 bicycles. I'm still fat. I can go buy a 4th bicycle, and the only thing that I will do is I will get another bicycle. Let me explain. Doing IT strategy as a purchasing strategy will get you more stuff. It will never get you a new capability. Is that fair? Stop thinking that because you are going to get a new technology, you're going to get the capability to achieve that feature function or that enhancement in productivity that you want to achieve. So let's start with a strategy, then we'll go into the current paradigms and then real-world examples. So with that said, what is your strategy? Are you solving this massive problem we have? And I say problem because we all put it as a problem. I don't think it's a problem because for people who are my age or older, you remember the Palm 5X. Everybody brought it. Nobody admitted to it. We all connected it to the email. We all synchronized. And this is pre-2000. My God, I'm old. Oh, you don't like my example? Well, what did you do to block the iPads when they came in? And how much is at risk of your job right now if you don't admit them? You see how the tides turn? And what? Everybody forgot the Motorola phone? that was before the iPhone, that everybody had to have? What I'm trying to tell you is in a real world, there's going to be fads, there's going to be fashion, there's going to be I want to be cool, there's going to be functionality, and you as an IT professional living and coexisting in this environment are going to have to see not only how you accommodate these technologies, but how do you maintain a secure and efficient environment. And saying no is what's killing us. Is that fair? Becoming Mr. No, I can't do that, is what's getting us out of the conversation, out of the budget, and even sometimes out of the company. So please understand, the biggest thing I'm going to tell you today is stop saying no. In whichever form or fashion you're saying it. Because it's going to hinder you from saying yes to any form or fashion of the solution. Is that fair? So, if you tell me my solution is go with bring your own device, I will ask you a simple question. Have you talked to the lawyers? Have you talked to human resources? If you say no, my answer is going to be, it's going to hurt at some point. If you say yes, I did it, I'll say good for you. There you go. Now that you know the implications, proceed as recommended. So everything I tell you, whenever it sounds horrible, it doesn't mean horrible, it just means do the homework. You see my point? So if the lawyers say, yes, we can do this, because sometimes union laws or any other type of implications may stop you. But if they don't stop you and you've talked and done the homework, God bless you, go ahead, perfect. Now don't think that this is a technology problem, because it's not. BYOD is not a technology problem. And it's not a technology solution by itself. Now the next ones are quite simple. It's the new fad, the new talk of the town, right? I'm going to solve everything with MDM, or I'm going to solve everything with VDI, or I'm going to solve it. You're not going to, it's the hammer. I'm just trying to point out the hammers, right? No, you need a hammer. You absolutely need VDI. You absolutely need MDM. But it's not going to solve the whole strategy, and it's not going to clean the whole problem. So with that said, the question was, what is your strategy? And I hope you're thinking about this in a broader scope than me buying more bicycles. And I brought that example in so that it hurts, okay? I want you to say, okay. You don't have to admit it, but I want it to hurt. Because if your strategy is not, I'm going to deploy these 7 capabilities, and whatever that implies, which means services, it means deployment, it means adoption, and it means feature functions as well as products. If it doesn't include all that, then we have a problem. Because what you're going to get is a new bicycle. Now, let's talk about what's happening very, very fast. I haven't updated these links because, you know what, to be quite honest with you, it's ridiculous how fast, and I'll tell you how fast they've moved. The first one is, we did this study in 2011, then we repeated it in 2012, and we got exactly the same results. And the questionnaire was very simple. We went to a whole bunch, about 100 companies, global companies worldwide, and we asked them, how many, the first question was for IT. How many of your users do you think access high business impact information? Anybody knows what high business or HBI impact information is? It means compliancy data, okay? Are we good? Sarbanes-Oxley, FINMA, and all this fun stuff like Basel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. DOD, right? All the insurance companies. So what I'm trying to tell you is high business impact data. How many people access it? And this people said 34% on their personal device. Okay, the question is on their personal device. And then we went out and we asked the users, a sample of users in this 100 companies. And we asked how many people access the information, and guess what the number was. And then what happened was that we started thinking, who do you think is right? And the guy smiling is right, by the way, just in case you didn't catch that. And what I'm trying to say here is very simple. You're not going to stop the flow of information. Just like we couldn't stop IM, right, from happening, and we cannot stop people from bringing their own devices. Now, the real question is, what are they bringing them for? And so we went out and we found even further studies done by Gardner and others that show you that about 88% of employees access personal or HPI data on their personal devices. And people are carrying, now it's 3.7. That's why I said it's ridiculous. It's every 2-3 months we get a new study, right? So I don't know what 0.7 means in a device, but it means that people are carrying a ton of devices in their pockets. I'm trying to go to 2 devices and I still carry 5. Okay, so it's really crazy because I don't use 5, but I'm carrying them. And it also means that my data is stored in over 7 USBs in my bag and about 5, but I'm an IT geek, I get that. But if I go to any bag of any executive, I'll find at least 3 USBs with critical data and at least 2 or 3 devices. Is that fair? And you have to manage this. So that's the big problem. Now, work is an activity. And understand, this workplace word anymore doesn't work for anybody. And the reason is simple. I wake up in the morning, and I'm not kidding. I see email, and then I turn around and look at my wife and say, "Good morning, honey." In fact, she told me the other day this joke. She said, "Can I email you the good morning so that you don't have to turn around?" And I dare you to say that you don't do the same thing, because I'll find some culprits in here too. Is that fair? So, you know, we wake up and first thing, right? I got to see, 14 emails. Oh, my God. And my kid is like, "Good morning. I'm here." So what I'm trying to tell you is I'm not talking about a desktop at that moment. Think of yourself in this moment, which is on the way here or when you wake up. You're not at a screen. Is that fair? You're trying to achieve an activity. So why am I focusing on this for a second? Because I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. You have to understand what I'm trying to do is achieve a task, which is read my email. Is that correct? And I'm going to do it on whichever screen is closest and more convenient for me. So if I have a tablet right next, I'll probably use the tablet because it's more convenient, right? I'm getting old and I can't see little things when I just wake up. I'm kidding about that, but I'm trying to give you an example. But if I'm at work, I'm not going to grab my phone. I'll just read the email on my screen. What I'm trying to tell you is it's so task-oriented now. I have to do a task. And the task could be personal or work. And they're interchangeable throughout the whole day. In fact, right now you're probably listening to me and then you'll get an email which is personal and you'll reply. And it's all task-oriented. In fact, I don't want to say this publicly, but I will. I make a lot of mistakes in this wonderful conferences. Like this one. We're all dyslexic now, right? We're all going from A to B to C to C, D to... And we're almost paranoid. We're like, did I miss anything? Did I go there? And what I'm trying to tell you is you're not going to achieve this with one device either. So trying to support 1, 2, or 3 devices is not going to solve it either. Now, this creates a perfect storm because if you look at all the statistics from last year to this year, it's actually more interesting to see last year's than this year's. Because this year, it says, and I don't know if it's right, that there's over 7 billion devices out there. 7 billion mobile phones. Okay? How many people are in the world? Anybody wants to take a hack at this one? 7 billion. So there's just about as many phones as there are people in the world. And these are connected, functionable phones, because that's the only device that everybody, because they're being built, that we can actually measure, no? So it's crazy because they forecast that next year there's going to be more phones than people in the world. Okay? I guess a phone is going to own a human at some point. And what I'm trying to tell you here is, you know what? This world where we manage 1 phone per individual is also ending. Because you will very soon see people bringing 2, 3 phones to work and asking you to support them as well in different methods, in different functions. One is going to have more high business impact access and another one maybe less. So all the statistics of how many people access what and how many tablets are there and whether tablets are faster growing than, but they're going to overpower the desktop or the laptop, I don't know. I can tell you one thing. There are already more devices than people if you add them up. So without going into here, there's one lesson that very few people have thought about in the market, and is consumerization is your ability to go buy any device you want. Is that fair? Consumerization of IT is a dramatically different thing, and we talk about them as if it was the same thing. Now you see my point? Consumerization of IT is IT's capability of managing those devices. Let me go back into this one again. One thing is for you to buy devices. The other one is what IT does with those. Now you see where I'm going? The SLA that IT has on you and your devices, it has nothing to do with your capability to go right now and buy another 17 of them. So what's interesting is let's talk about both. So you see, I find the current state of affairs quite funny. The first thing that happened to us, and I hope you agree with me on this progression of sorts, first thing that happened to us is we all were supporting 1 or 2 environments. Is that fair? And all of a sudden somebody said, you know what, reduce the cost of ownership, reduce the investment, reduce the budget. And so we went ahead and we stopped investing in this environment. In other words, we let it go legacy, right? So 3, 4, 5 years without updates. Then what we did is they said, well, some executives brought in their mobile devices, phones, tablets, etc. So we were forced to solve this problem by what? Let's buy some good MDM and manage that. Is that fair? Is that what we did? And then we said, no, wait. You know what? Everybody's complaining. The environment is horrible. So let's update it. Okay, so you updated something here, right? It doesn't have to be everything, but something. And then what happened is we said, wait, but we want to enable BYOD, right? Bring your own device, bring your own environment, whatever. Bring your own whatever. And so what's the solution to this? VDI. Let's centralize the problem in a data center and just provide it the same way. Have you seen anybody try to access through a tablet a remote environment with their finger on an airplane? It is the funniest thing you'll see in your life. Because they'll spend 90% of the time scrolling and 2% trying to click the thing that doesn't click. And what I'm trying to tell you is the solution you just built for that guy is to get him mad. Again, okay? What you achieved was to psychologically digress that person to a caveman and make him mad at you directly. And you spend a ton of money trying to do that. So my point is, this one was specifically fun. And then what we actually achieved at the end of the day is to end up not with one environment, but we'd end up with 4x. Now, if you want to put 6x here, or 8x, or 19x, I don't care. You get the point, right? You ended up with, is this fair? Anybody disagrees? So what's the point here? The point here is, how are you going to measure the TCO of this thing? How are you going to manage this one environment? I'm going to say something horrible. Please allow me. You know what? We weren't good to begin with on the first one. Is that fair? Okay, we were good, but not that good. And guess what? We just multiplied it by 4, by 6, by 18, and we think we're going to get better. The strategy of this is flawed. Is that okay with you? The logic of this is flawed. Because you know what? The function is not to reduce TCO forever, like everybody in finance would like us to believe. Because understand, this is like an airline, and we've all gone into an airline like this, that treats you so bad, so bad, so bad, so bad, so bad, and it's so cheap, so cheap, so cheap, so cheap that you don't want to fly them anymore. Have you gone on one of these? Okay, what am I trying to tell you? That's IT today. We're trying to make it so cheap, so cheap, so cheap, and so bad, so bad, so bad that I don't want to have anything to do with IT, so I'd rather go to Media Market or Best Buy or whichever is your local store of technology, buy my own technology, source my own technology, maintain my own technology, and connect to your mess of services. What did I say that's bad? Tell me, how did I lie to you right now, please? So the focus is not this, because what you're achieving is to lower agility. The focus is really to go and say there's a minimum cost of running IT, a minimum cost. Just like there's a minimum cost of running the manufacturing of this company, or sales, or transportation, whatever this company does, right? Or the banking system, or the insurance. You see what I'm saying? There's a minimum cost of running this service. The minimum cost where we want efficiency. And any efficiency that I achieve, I will reinvest in agility. How do you do this? Because you're thinking that I'm going to go all theory on you on the whole session. No, no, no. How do I do this? Start focusing on services. Stop focusing on devices. I'll say this again. Start focusing on services to the devices. Stop focusing on the device. In other words, I do not care which device you use to read my email. I will provide you with the service of email. And if I provide you with a spectacular quality of service for email, then you will get email the right way on your 14 or 2 devices. Is that fair? If I manage access correctly, then I will learn who you are, where you are, and what you're doing from the point of origin, but mostly from the service. Now, I just listed a whole bunch of services here for the fun of it. You could put any others that you want, okay? But it's just a list to explain to you that this is a technical talk. But understand, talking about the hammer will not solve the how to build a house problem. So we have to go a little higher on that. Now, with that said, I am trying to say, go back to 1x, but 1x set of services for this person. Now you see where I'm going? You want to go into 1x set of services and stop digressing onto the 4x devices. Now, let me go deeper. It's not about a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, or a phone strategy. It's really about a mobile services strategy. Okay? That's what this is about. And if you want to look at this correctly, we've talked about this many times, but let me start with the paradigms. There's going to be 10 paradigms, about 10 or 11. I'm going to go very fast into each one of them. I will not go deep technically into any one of them because I expect you to understand it. And I'll tell you something, there's probably 1 to 3 sessions in this conference about every single one of these paradigms. Is that fair? So you can go deep into every one of those sessions. So let's start with them. The first one is desktop to screens. Like I said before, you're not talking about a desktop anymore, you're not talking about a tablet, and you're definitely not talking about a mobile phone. You're talking about you carry right now many screens and you want all of them to be serviced. Is that fair? So with that said, what I'm trying to recommend to you is stop thinking that managing the app as one presentation model is going to solve this problem. You're going to have to go back to recommend to the application owners on old technologies like, if you want to call them like this, it's a simple analogy, screen scraping. I don't know if any of you remember this. It's the simple idea of presenting the same type of app in a format that's more amicable to that single device. Because I'll tell you something. If I want to go into the expense report system of this company, right, the one I work for, I don't want to see the whole detail that I would get if I'm on a 19, 20, 24-inch monitor, right? I just want to see a couple of pieces of data, and I want to take less actions because I'm on my mobile phone. It's exactly the same thing as you going to the portal of your bank on the web versus you going to the portal of your bank on the phone. On the phone, I have different functionality. Is that fair? I may even have added functionality like taking pictures of a check and that getting deposited. So what am I trying to say here? Stop thinking that this is an application management. In some cases, it's an application rewrite. In some cases, it's even a different form factor, so you have to go back to 3-tier or 4-tier capabilities within the application so that you can have the front end be completely desegregated from the application and you can have it provide mobile capabilities. You're not going to achieve that with any of the technologies that we try to talk about commonly on desktop. And with this one, I'm trying to just break away from just thinking, you know what, it's all a device problem. Because I'll tell you again, it is not. So with this one spoken for, it's as simple as understand. Web interfaces like HTML5 and others are pretty good for doing this type of technology and being agnostic, but not when you pack the web page. So again, you're seeing this type, this huge web on this tiny little screen. I'm talking about reformatting, and I'm talking about capability of understanding which device is accessing that information. Now, as I get that you get this, let's move on. Data center to the cloud is actually a very interesting one, because while we all understand cloud, very few people are enacting front-end burst-out models. Let me talk about this for a second. There's this interesting company called Flavors. You can go see the case study right here. And what they're doing is they're doing a web front-end. They're a ticketing company, so they sell ticket to events, okay? They're not a huge company. They're a medium-sized, good-sized company. But what they did is they have a burst-out in the front and a burst-out in the back model. So it's quite interesting. What I'm recommending to you is understand that in the front, you should also burst out. Because like here, they're selling 150,000 tickets in 10 seconds, and they are a brick-and-mortar shop. So let me explain. They have a data center. They could never achieve this burst model if the only burst that they're doing is on the back end to Azure. You also need a front-end burst. So my point to you is, understand that there are very creative technologies that are happening out there for your application and for you to start assessing. And like I said, stop thinking that cloud is only for back-end. And also stop thinking that cloud is only for publicly accessible information. There's many things that you're sending right now to the public cloud which are not compliant-based, which you have no problem with. So what I'm trying to say is, instead of saying no to the cloud or yes to the cloud, grab your catalog of services and define which one is okay to go to the cloud and which one is not. And that is the best way for you to assess which model you can rewrite, which model you can just host. Now, let's go to the next one. Office to the world and user password persona profile. First one, Office to the world is quite simple. I know very few, if not almost nobody, who just simply works in one location. Is that fair? Tell me if you only do work in one location today. That doesn't exist anymore to almost any role. There's very few roles who actually do that. And therefore, you have to understand that it is critical for you to manage these three aspects in whichever order you fancy. I truly don't care if you say what, where, who, or who, where, what. But the order goes like this. I can detect who you are by several instances. Number one, I can detect which user you are in my directory. I can detect which profile. Let's go into profiles for a while. I'm going to spend some time in this slide. Profiles should not be more than 3 or 4. I've seen this for over 12, 15 years, and I've seen how many people have made the biggest mistake in their career by trying to grab group policy and creating 15 profiles for their company, and they just added permutations. In other words, combinations of combinations, statistically impossible to manage, okay? Understand, you could probably manage your whole company by 3 profiles. Let me explain, or maybe 4. Number 1, corporate environment, right? Number 2, compliance. So this guy here, he's in finance, or he's an officer of the company, or etc., so he has to be compliant. You see the difference? Corporate is just a normal corporate environment. The third one could be whatever your company specializes in. So a kiosk in the airport, manufacturing. You see what I'm saying? Anything else. And if you want, because you have a lot of partners, a fourth one, you could have an external profile or a vendor profile. You see my point? But please tell me you need another one, because I will just baffle myself and try to tell you I have not seen that be successful. Every single deployment that I've seen be successful has 3 profiles. Maximum, exaggeratedly maximum, 4 profiles. That is it. So when I say that I know who you are, the first question is, what's your name, which department, all that, but that doesn't give me anything, with all due respect. What I want to know is, are you a corporate profile? Yes, okay, so now I understand your corporate profile. Second one, are you compliance-based? You see what I'm saying? Do I have to restrict and RMS every single conversation you have? Or do I have to filter some of those conversations based on what's written there? Or do I have to restrain your access to some websites? Or can I enable you on devices I don't trust? Or can I enable you on devices I trust? All this is part of either your gateway, your access, or your group policy. I didn't go esoteric on you. I didn't go crazy. Is this fair? Do you agree so far? If I know who you are, it gives me all kinds of capabilities to understand which services I provide to you. So the first thing is understand user profile and compliance. I'll talk about the 3 of them in more depth in a minute. Then we have the device and location. Why is this important? I am not going to enable you on a version of Android that I don't trust, right? Or a device that is not encrypted. You trying to transfer a huge amount of money within the finance system of the company while you're in Aruba. You might as well be on a cruise ship and in your vacation, but I don't trust you, so I won't let you. And you know what? You're probably right. And even if this is the CFO, he'll say thank you to you because you did your job. He may hate you for it, but he will see the wiseness in your actions. Let me explain this again. There are systems that cannot be accessed outside of the corporate firewall. Should not be accessed. There are systems that can be accessed, but only on trusted devices. And it has nothing to do with the persona or the profile of the person. It has everything to do with the device and the location. How the heck do you get location? IP address, my friend. It's as simple as the IP address. It will tell you exactly where that person is connecting from. And it is not harder than that, and you don't have to go crazier than that. That has proven to be effective for 80, 90% of the cases. Hey, can you spoof? Can you VPN? Can you? Yeah, that's, but come on. If the guy's doing all of that, you should call HR anyways on him, right? I mean, if the guy's trying to break the company, he's trying to break the company physically, logically. He's out of breach of contract anyways. So let me touch on this topic for a second. You know how many times I've heard from IT, Eduardo, how do we restrain a person? How do we contain a person? How do we punish a person? And you know what my answer is all the time? You're not HR. Don't. You report in compliancy. Is that fair? You don't enforce in compliancy. In compliancy is enforced by HR or legal. Because understand, if you're the one who says, okay, denial of service, then that person already understands that they did something. You see the whole thing? And sometimes you want to do it for their actions. But sometimes what you want to do is you just want to send an alert to the boss and to HR and say, guy, this guy's doing something incorrect, but it's your job. So understand, don't try always to be the cop in the jail system. It doesn't work. And I've seen it before in IT. It doesn't work. And the last one is the what. I need to understand from a simple catalog, I'll say this 10 times, simple catalog. See, the problem every time I say catalog in one of the conferences and when I go visit environments is everybody's like, well, I have 3,500 applications. And it's hard as hell for me to determine what is simple. Start with something. Start with a catalog of 10. Start with a catalog of 30. The common applications. Start with something or you will never start. Okay? But you need a simple catalog so that I understand that the profile compliance has access to this simple catalog or doesn't. Okay? You need this catalog to understand which services you provide. And this obviously contains all the collaboration, all the communication. Now, there are a myriad of technologies you can use for this. I'm trying to show you a whole buffet of technologies. You can do this with DAC, you can do this with gatewaying, you can do this with VPN, you can do this with Active Directory, you can do this with group policy, you can do this with specialized local tools. At your heart's content, be happy. Is that fair? Use whatever tickles your fancy and serves your purpose. Use it. The biggest problem here is we buy the technology and we don't necessarily widely deploy it. We just grab a pilot. Is that fair? Use it. This is the first big recommendation I'm making to you. If you want to understand how to be successful in building a BYOD or whatever type of strategy you want to call here, flexible work style, whichever is your topic, it all starts with an access strategy. That's point number one. It's probably the most important one, and it's the one that's going to mark your success or your failure. Okay? Now, let's go to the next one. There is this incredible problem that nobody has been able to solve. And it is how do we detect which data is compliant and which one isn't. Agreed? And it is a huge problem. Because when they tell you you got to be compliant, you start sweating cold, right? And you're like, well, where is all this data? And how do I detect it? And how do I protect it? So what's the solution? Protect the whole environment. Is that fair? Ring fence all the animals in the zoo, and that way I'm all safe. But it doesn't really work because this thing still finds itself in emails and USB sticks. Look, I have a slide that I will not show to you, which has about 25 articles of the last 25 data breaches. And every name that you trust is there. Every security agency, okay, even the ones that you're hearing in the news right now, that how they lost data, every government, almost every financial institution, almost every large manufacturer. Everybody has lost data, everybody has suffered from this, and the solution of ring fencing the whole thing is just not working. Is that fair? So the strategy that we've seen here work is number one, try to understand, not ring fence, understand the different types of data. The first one is public data that you should not protect because it doesn't matter. It's already public. Is that okay? Second, data that even if it becomes public, it has no real relevance. Example, I send you an invite to eat lunch today, you accept, and you recommend a restaurant, then you invite him, he invites him, and then he comes back to me. Who cares if that goes public, right? And you know what? That's about, I dare say, 60% of your data. Or the meeting agreement of the agreement of the agreement that never became an agreement, that never passed. I'm not kidding. 70% of your data is that. Because that's 70% of the communication that we have normally. And mostly today, where everything is stored and every single email has 17 attachments bouncing around 17 times and they're exactly the same version. Number three, actual data that could contain some risk and that you just want to ring fence in the sense of normal firewalling. Okay, so not crazy, because if they get one of your IP addresses or one of your faxes, this could potentially be a problem, but not really. The real interesting data is this one, and let me go very deep into this. There's two types of data here that's very, very delicate. Number one is your trade secrets. If you're a pharmaceutical company, you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? The formula on how to build the new drug that's going to make your company survive for the next 15 years. Is that fair? The routes of the airplanes, the secrets of the manufacturing, the agreements and contracts with the vendors, all this stuff is not something that Sabarns and Basel and HIPAA and FISMA and CSOX and Act 2000 cares about, right? They don't care about this. But without this type of data, you don't survive. Are we good so far? So what I'm trying to tell you is, you have to see which systems touch this data. Now, if these systems are informal collaboration systems like portals and email, then you have to detect it via searching and like technologies you saw, where if I see that you say the word X, then I write protected, right? You have to determine how you're going to ring fence that. That's fine. But trying to go there is more the responsibility of the user, just like it is my responsibility to lock my closet in my office if I have contracts there. You see my point? I mean, this is as much an HR, a personal, and a habit, organizational responsibility as it is IT's to provide the capability to. So you have to provide more capabilities and train the users more. God forbid I said two things you don't like to do. You like to deploy technology and forget about it. And I'm trying to tell you that doesn't work. Because this is a lot more training, okay, and habit forming that's going to solve the problem. The other one is actually a compliancy problem. Now, here you face two things. If you have to be compliant with BASIL, or with HIPAA, or with FISMA, or the BYOD, or ARPA, those things are very specific. And you see the data there, credit card info, aggregate data, health info, username, password. Those things are very specific. And they will show you that it's less than 2% of your data that you have to be literally securing. The problem is finding this 2%. But I'll tell you something, it's going to be a lot easier if what you do is, if out of the 3,500 catalog of applications that you have, reduce to, let's say, 200 or 300 of the ones you know today, you detect which apps touch this data, and you start protecting those apps. Let me say this again very slowly. It's a lot easier for you to detect which applications manage compliancy data and start protecting the data that those applications touch than trying to go through your whole data storage and trying to detect where the heck are these specific fields. You see where I'm going? So that's one type of strategy that has actually worked really well. Another one, and that detects about 90% of your data. Look, nothing detects 100, okay? So if you're looking for the 100%, God bless you. There's very few people who have found the 100% of this data, because this data leaks out to different systems. It's obvious. Somebody copies it, writes it on a Post-it, whatever. But you also have to understand that I'm going to go back to the human factor. We're all under contract in the companies we work for, right? And therefore, that means that we have to act legally, and we're bound legally to act correctly. So you can enforce it up to a certain degree, and the rest has to be part of this legal contract that the person has with the company. Now, the third aspect I want to talk about in here is very simple. Once you detect this data, you're going to have to determine how much you press security up until the point where you're making this functionality unusable. Because I have seen so many times people that put so many factors of authentication on specific type of data that the user says enough. I'll tell you an example. This happened in the late 90s. It's one of the security agencies that everybody knows about. I'm not going to say country or anything, but one of the top security agencies in the world. And there was this lady who managed top classified information. She had a desk in this place. And IT came in. It's a story I participated in. IT came in and grabbed her PC and said, because this PC accesses really critical data, right? We're going to slap a screensaver and a desktop that's all red and says code 6, right? So that everybody that works here knows that this is a super top secret PC, and we secure it that way. Lady came in next day, made a phone call, and she got back her full configuration of the desktop. How did she do this? Number one, she said, you know what, I've been working here 15 years, I know what my job is, and I've been security compliant for 15 years, okay? Number two, this is where I work. I don't want to see code 6, I want to see a picture of my dog, okay? So, good for you that you need to be reminded what this PC does. I know what this PC does, I know what I do. And number three, this is my work environment. So always understand one thing. It doesn't matter how much you try to secure and go crazy about this. You're talking about the flexibility, the work environment, and the productivity of the people using it. So always go to the point where you're securing it and you're compliant. Never go beyond the point where you're going to get smacked because you're doing crazy stuff. So also, this needs a strategy by itself. And data compliancy is very complicated. We have very simplistic tools. It's not something that I'm telling you it's incredibly solving. Well, that click is simple. Everybody knows what's the cost of data loss, right? It's huge fees, huge fines, and huge loss of revenue for the company. Like I said, we have some simple solutions. One is a phone application, kind of cute. It actually came from a very good study. And it just says which type of data is compliant for which type of compliance requirement. By the way, let me go back. I forgot to tell you something on this one. There's one last thing that very few people are looking at, which is the International Accounting Standards Board. I highly recommend you start looking into this. Why is the reason for that? Let me tell you something. For any company that has multiple locations, so it works and serves multiple countries. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I would guess, what, half of you, right? Have to work with companies that have multiple country locations. The problem that the International Accounting Standard Board has with that is in some countries revenue is pre-tax and in some countries revenue is post-tax. You see my point? Or margin, etc. So when you state, whether it be publicly or privately, as for tax purposes or reporting to a stock market valuation, you have to standardize. And the only standard for that today is not a compliant data. So this is not Basel or etc. It's the IASB board. So you see what I'm saying? The International Accounting Standards Board. And so there's many finance departments today that have to find within these systems where this data is so that they can ring fence it and so that they can convert it so they can report appropriately the numbers of the company to whoever they have to report. So this is starting to be just as big as a compliance problem as any of the others. And I'm letting you know because this is going to, if it hasn't already hit you on the side like a train, it will, okay? So pay attention to it. So like I said, there's some very good classification wizards. This is not a classification tool for data. This is a classification tool so that you know that if email address affects this as a classification, this private designation, and this government regulation. It's a cute tool. It's good. I'll tell you something. You'll find different things out there. I'm just trying to point you to different ideas that help you out on this problem. The other one is there's a whole bunch of scrubbing tools out there. Nothing is going to do the job to 100%. But we have one that scrubs portals like SharePoint, et cetera, and it tells you what type of classification data we found or not. But like I said, you're going to need a lot more in here, okay? This is very manual. This, I'm trying to say in a very painful, and I apologize, incorrect way, this requires its own budget, okay? And its own initiative. It is that big. And you got to be very careful because when you talk about BYOD, let me go back into the topic you came into the door to talk about. When you talk about BYOD and you get data breach, you get smacked even harder than anything else. Is that fair? This is the biggest topic in BYOD. The biggest one. How do you secure your data? That's why I spend so much time in it. Now let me go faster. Now we're going to talk about policy enforcement for security. There are 1,000 ways to do this. But you see, the more we work and the more we try to find devices that don't have, I was just checking the time, devices that don't have virus problems, they don't exist. Go to security.org. I may show you or may not show you the chart. But look, the biggest contenders out there are the guys who say, I never had a virus. Lie. Everybody has had security threats. Everybody. Everybody has holes in their code. Everybody tries to fix them. Some, and I do say us very proudly, fix all of them in the fastest time in the industry. Others don't even recognize them. Let me tell you what I mean by others. Because you're thinking, oh, the guy's going after Apple or after Android. Yes, I am. But even more than that, I'm going after Mozilla, and I'm going after Chrome. Because I'll tell you something, a browser is a bigger door than any other program. It's as big as an operating system. Did you realize that? So every time you say, yes, you can install Firefox, and yes, you can install Chrome, and yes, you can install Safari, I don't care, go ahead, as long as you realize now you have to protect a whole bunch of other surface of attack that you just opened. Is that fair? So stop thinking, oh no, he's saying this because he wants to be. No, I'm not being mean to anybody. I'm just trying to tell you, you can't open a hole in the wall the size of this, huge thing and then just forget about it because everything else is secured. You have to protect that too. That's all I'm saying. Because every single surface of attack is exactly that, a surface of attack. There's many solutions, like I said. There's UAG, there's direct access, there's VPNing, there's a different type of encryptions. I would recommend to you that the easiest way to solve the security problem is by you defining those 4 profiles. Because depending on which profile I work on, depends on which security threat I'm going to be faced with, depends on which data classification I'm going to try to solve. Now you see why I simplify this? Because there is really a simple way to do it, or simpler. I shouldn't say simple, but simpler, which is if I know who you are, right, corporate, compliant, et cetera, I know then which surface of attack you have, and I can do whitelisting. What's the difference between black and whitelisting? I know you've heard this 1,000 times. Blacklisting is telling you everything you can't do. That's impossible. All you guys are creative, and most of you are even worse than I am. I'm just kidding. But you know what? Whitelisting is much simpler. You're in manufacturing, this is all you can do. I'm sorry, that's it. That's what we hired you for. This is the tool for the job. Hey, I brought this device of mine. Good, that device only can do this. That's what we hired you for. The rest of the time, you can do Angry Birds till you enjoy. You see my point? So it doesn't matter. But you have to understand that you have to go through the whole tools for every device. You also have to understand that the security talk, the security topic, has been expanded to be a management topic. Is that fair? You can no longer just talk security without talking management of the device and understanding, because I cannot secure an environment I do not understand. Now, there's different types of security, and what I've seen in large corporations and medium-sized corporations is they're not trying to do this game anymore of consoles. Let me explain the game of consoles. Have any of you seen the series Game of Thrones? No? Okay, great series in the US. I am not a big fan of it, but what I love is there's like 17,000 kings and they all kill each other. Okay, that's the summary in about 2 seconds. Is that fair? So 17,000 kings, well, that's the same thing with management tools in our environment today, right? 17,000 tools and they all try to trump each other. Who's the best, who can do it better, who can... Stop that. Okay, for the mobile environment, you're going to have one tool that can manage... Look, I don't care if you end up with 5. I'm recommending don't end up with 17. But it's not a game of how many consoles you have. It is a game of grab one for mobile devices that you have total access to and you can control, like laptops and tablets. And maybe grab another one like Intune to manage your devices that are not yours, to bring your own devices, like mobile phones. And in those devices, you're going to do a lighter touch management, but you're still going to be able to do remote wipe. Now you see my point? Because on a laptop, I want to enforce encryption. On a cell phone, I want to remote wipe. Now, you may find a console that does this for everything, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think today we're all on the understanding that you're going to need 2 or 3 environments to clean this up. And it is as important as the security. Now, let's go to the next one. Agility, locked down to controlled. Now, there are many applications that are going to span across all your devices. I love the example of OneNote because OneNote came out first on every single environment we know, right? So OneNote you can have, it's like Angry Birds, it's everywhere, right? And I'll tell you something, what's interesting about this application is that I can have data, transport data that could be not necessarily compliant, but that could be interesting across devices. So when you start having this type of new environment applications, new generation applications that have data across environments and replicate, what you have to understand is you can't compromise security. Is that fair? Therefore, you're going to have to decide if you provide that service to all the devices or all your services based on compliancy again. But after you pass that, you're going to have to support it. Because I don't know if you noticed, halfway through the talk, I went back to our old model. We just protect, secure, and forget. Hey, that made the lady hate her environment and ask for a whole change again back. I know, you can't do that. So stop trying to only protect. Understand this is more about enabling. And you're going to have to start promoting applications like this. So a great example is SkyDrive. Start promoting different uses for SkyDrive so that your users are more productive and get better environment. And obviously protect what you need to protect there. Now, there are many ways to do this. I'll tell you a story. There's this organization that I talked to, a government organization, that they're building a series of dams. Now, as you can understand, a dam infrastructure is extremely classified. It's extremely sensitive because it generates electricity for a ton of the population, and it becomes an asset of the country. Is that fair? So it is as secret as anything else that this country can manage. And look, I'm being fair by not telling you which country. I'm talking, if you want to approach me at the end, I'll tell you the story, okay? With the name of the country, it doesn't matter. But as this is being recorded, I'm being just sensitive to this country. And what they came up with is they said to the vendors who are building the different parts of the dam, because you got to understand that there's one vendor that comes in, digs out, another one that comes in, lays the foundation, another one comes in, lays all the electricity and all the tubing, etc., right? All the turbines and engines, etc., etc., etc. You don't want them to keep the plans of the data of this location after they leave. Why? Because it is a government secret, okay? And it should be. So what they did is they said to every single vendor, let's set up Active Directory with Federation Services and RMS, and we're going to secure every single one of your documents, whether they be CAD, CAM, PDF, etc., as well as every single conversation you have, and they're regulated by group policy. And when they leave the contract and they end up their part of the construction, in group policy they just get dropped, and therefore any document or any email that they retain after that, as it doesn't get authenticated with Active Directory anymore, bye. No more access to it. And it is already encrypted. Hey, can it be broken? Look, many things can happen, but you already made it so hard that it's worthwhile. You see my point? You already made it so hard that it is already worthwhile. Okay? So there's many creative, simple ways that you can take on this type of solution that really help. Now, there's also other organizations which are looking through two types of cloud solutions here, which are actually quite interesting. I was talking to a bank, southern part of the world, and they came up to me and they said, we're interested in not only caching identity on the cloud, right, and using different points of identity for federation, we're actually trying to divest and reduce the amount of virtual machines we have on the branches. Listen to this example, it's quite interesting. We want to have less virtual machines on the branch, and we want the virtual machines that shouldn't be on the branch to be on the cloud. So what they're doing is they're putting configuration points and monitoring points, as in Config Manager and Ops Manager, up on the cloud for the branch management system. It's an IaaS solution, if you understand, but it's actually quite interesting because it's not in your data center. It's a server that's not managing necessarily highly compliant data, right? But it is a service that provides configuration and monitoring for the branch system, and it doesn't have to reside in the branch virtual machine environment. So very creative solutions that we're seeing in the world on this type of management. And last but not least, well, no, not last but not least, we have three big ones to go for. Now let's talk about consumerization of IT. Last year, I went into this topic, and I used somewhat of these type of thoughts. I'm going to tell you what the progress has been since last year, just in case you didn't see that one. And in case you did, you'll see the progress of our thinking and what we've seen in the market. The first is, this is what I presented last year. There's a brilliant individual within Microsoft Services. He came up with this model named Arno Havenfeld, and it was critical because what this proposes is that we can divide the type of users and type of applications into 4 boxes, 4 types. The first type is the old IT thinking of here is your device, right? Here's your laptop that weighs, I don't know, 24 pounds, 50 kilos, right? And God bless you. Hey, but I don't care what you want, this is what you get, okay? So that's here is your own. Choose your own is the new environment where almost everybody's going, which is I give you a white list of devices, so 10 devices, and you pick your own and you buy that one. And everybody's happy. And actually, we're seeing that about 80 to 90% of the companies worldwide are moving to this model and calling it BYOD. God bless you what you call it. We call it more choose your own because it's a more accurate term if you wish. The next one is bring your own, which is bring your own device, which is you bring whatever the heck you want. Okay, God bless you. And the last one, which you have to recognize exists also, and very few people want to talk about, is on your own, which means you bring whatever you want and I don't care about you, okay? Who is this guy? He's the guy who's going to paint the walls, right? I'm going to give him Wi-Fi, but if he calls my help desk, I'm going to say, buddy, I don't care. God bless you. So there's no Wi-Fi, go home. Connect from somewhere else. So the point is there's this people which work for you or work with you that you're not going to provide to them more than just a wireless environment. And they may even be your own employees. You see, one of the things we did in Microsoft is now we have in our buildings 2 networks. We have a personal network that has obviously some regulation, some compliance, but there's no support on it. And it's for your personal devices, and it's for you to access whatever you want to access out there. So your personal use. And there's another network, which is the corporate network, that has all the restrictions, all the validations, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't necessarily have to even be a profile. There can also be a service that is on your own, right? Which gets no support. And that's the nature of that service. And that's perfectly fine. Now, Actually, you know what? For universities, this is brilliant. You can provide one type of network which has more restriction, etc., but another type of network with a completely different SLA, and also a completely different type of service guarantee and delivery. Now, understand, what we've seen as a big change from last year to this year are 2 clicks. The first one is we've seen people break down bring your own into managed and unmanaged, okay? And that has been a big difference. But the biggest one is people think about these boxes as a person. So I'm going to box you into the green one, right? Or I'm going to box you into the blue one. No, not true. The way it works is actually here, it's a return to the thinking of devices. And this is where you say, you know what, your phone is going to be on your own. I do not support anything there outside of some of the services that I provide generically, like email, calendaring, and maybe some document synchronization. But also understand, you may not want more than that. Is that fair? That may be all you want. So I'm actually servicing you perfectly, and you're super happy. I'm not kidding, okay? Because on my phone, I don't want you to give me 17 applications, and you may not even give them to me. You may just give me calendaring, email, and document synchronization. The next one is, we're seeing primary devices move from, like I said, from here's your own to choose your own. Now, there is still a need for here's your own, and I have to say this because people get completely misconstrued about this one. If I am a doctor in an examining office, do I want this guy to bring his own, or am I going to provide a secure, health, and validated, as well as insurance compliant device on the examining room? Don't think about it. The answer is there. Okay? What about a stock market stockbroker? Don't think about it. The answer is there. There are some profiles which I'm sorry, you get no option. This is the device you use. God bless you. Period. If you disagree with me, think of the manufacturing floor. You're not going to let the guy bring in for the PLC in the manufacturing system or in electricity generation, the SCADA system. You see what I'm saying? You're not going to let these guys bring their own device. There is a device that manages this, and period. That it is what it is. So there is a need for here's your own. There's just not all the population like we used to have there. It's 2% of the population. And now about 50, 60 moves into the choose your own, and the rest is scattered across. But you cannot lose mobility. You cannot lose management. You cannot lose security. You cannot lose data classification on any of these. Is that fair? And we used to say and we used to think, oh, on your own, I don't have to. You have to, period. You have to. Okay? Management has to be there, as well as security. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Number one, I'm just going to do the whole slide in a second because you know what? I hope you've seen this, and if you haven't seen it, it is not that complicated, but I think it's brilliant. It starts with, there's a couple of profiles which are employee purchased, and this is the place where you have to be very careful because providing a stipend, everybody knows what a stipend is? Providing you cash to go buy a PC, okay? That's a stipend. So providing you a stipend generates tax. Let me say this again. If I give you money as a company, you have to be taxed for it. I have to be taxed for it. If I change your taxation, and this is outside of your laboral contract, God bless us. We have to go talk to HR. Now you see what I meant by go talk to HR first? If I say you're in a union, oh Lord, this is even more complicated. Now you may not even be able to do this because the CEO of the company will say, I'm not going to go into labor contract modifications over this, right? So be careful what you ask for. And if you do ask for it, then understand what the process is and do it correctly. I was with somebody from the UK. How many people are here from the UK? Okay. So this guy told me, he was right, by the way. He said, yeah, but you can negotiate the laboral contract and change it so that the stipend is responsibility of the company, but the taxation of the employee. And then, yes, just call the lawyers and do it. You see my point? So yes, I know you can go and do it. But guess what? According to UK law, as of my latest understanding, if you own the device, you own the apps, and you own the data. Did you know that? So God bless you, BYOD just went out the door. Hey, but I can change the laboral contract to achieve it. Go talk to the lawyers. If you achieve that, you pass that hurdle, you pass HR, you pass the CEO who says, yes, go ahead, re-sign the laboral contracts of all my employees, then you got a BYOD and God bless you. But just understand that the project just became a little bit, this is my sarcastic tone, okay? A tiny little bit more complex than you thought. It's not impossible. I've seen companies do it, but there's very few that have appetite to do it. The next part is obviously company purchase. Employee managed versus company managed. You got to be careful here, okay? There is a legal point where you cannot pass and you cannot manage more a device, right? I mean, you cannot go and wipe a device that is of a person if you don't own it and you don't have a contract with them on that capability. And people have gotten sued over this over the past year or two. In fact, I'll tell you a great story. There were two governments around the world, one in the US, local government, another one in Germany. And what happened here is the employees sued the government. So the employees of this local government division sued the government and said, you know what, I have emails here from you at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever, and my replies. So I'm not working 8-hour shifts anymore, I'm working 24-hour shifts or 18-hour shifts. And therefore, you owe me extra time. I'm not giving you any ideas, okay? And you know what happened? They won the lawsuits. And you know what happened in these two government institutions? And many companies are actually doing this. They turn email off at 8 p.m. and they turn it back on at 7 a.m. And the burst out kills your architectures, in case you didn't think about that one, okay? The burst out kills your Exchange architectures in the sense that you just didn't measure the amount of garbage that's going to go out in a burst. So now you have to think about that one too. So this is causing a lot of interesting shifts. Are all these examples useful? They're giving you good insight? That's the demos that I have, I'm sorry. So let's talk about the next one. Employee indifference, or I don't care about you versus I care about you and your company influenced. Obviously, there is a risk versus access and a control versus freedom. Sorry, I went too fast into that, okay? I hope this serves you. Copy the slide, use it as much as you want. I think it's a powerful one. But with that said, this is not meant to be comprehensive. It's just meant to provide you some example of the different type of profiles you could have per box. But like I said, it's more a device than a person that you want to think about here. And there's a ton of technologies you can deploy for enabling all this. I'm not going to go into it because you're going to see 1,000 cool sessions, not 1,000, but hundreds cool sessions in this conference that provide you far more detail than on this one. With that said, let me go into the last two and what I think is the most interesting and exciting part of the conversation. I'm not kidding. So let's go into applications. Stop trying to kill Angry Birds. You're not going to kill them, okay? Those guys can be thrown at any speed, velocity, explode, and come back. And why do you care about them? I'm not kidding. I'm going to tell you 3 examples because you think I'm joking. There was this guy who came up to me. He was a very, very large manufacturing company. And they said, we want to restrict on the phones of our constituents and employees. We want to restrict any gaming environment. And I said, well, the phones are not yours. God bless you. Stop. You're spending good money in the wrong place. But the fun thing is he also said something else which made a lot of sense to me. And then not. He said, I want to stop Plaxo and LinkedIn. Why? As well as Facebook, because we're losing our contacts to them. And that may be a legal breach. I said, you don't understand. Nobody loses nothing. You go in and you already did it because I just researched you while you were talking. You are on LinkedIn and you are in Plaxo, okay? So by the way, you said yes when this guy's asked you, do you want to give me your contacts? So they're not taking anything from you. You are agreeing to give it to them. So if your employee legally agrees to give their contact information and their contact network to this third party, legally, why are you trying to stop this? Again, what's the point? And what do you miss by the contact information? What are you losing? I used to be, in a previous life, in an environment that provided a lot of consultancy to sales, and some of the best networking contacts you can have are on LinkedIn. So again, this is a great tool to provide efficiency for some parts of your organization. Why are you trying to stop them? And I'll tell you another example. There was this insurance company here in Europe that asked me, you know what? We're having a huge problem with the union. They have to sign the agreement for us to have Wi-Fi and Facebook, but we're actually losing employees. Now, this sounded to me strange because I'm an old person, okay? But I'll tell you something. It was fascinating to hear from this guy who said, we need the top statisticians, right? The top mathematician majors from the colleges that come out. We're an insurance company. This is how we survive. They don't want to come work here for us anymore. They're going next door. And the reason is because they don't want a desk phone. They don't care about a desk phone. They want Facebook. And because I can't provide it to them, it is as aggressive as telling you, you don't get no phone. So simple as that. So the point is, don't focus on the colored ones, focus on providing mobile applications. Let's finish with the last one. Who's here to talk about TCO? Somebody? Nobody? Really? We all learned a lesson? I don't believe you. Let me tell you what's the lesson that we got, okay? The first 4 bars are desktop, the second 2 are RDS and VDI, and the last third are smartphone and tablet. Have you seen this before? Well, I'll tell you why you haven't, because I put this together and you shouldn't. See, this is 3 different studies from 3 different analysts on 3 different populations, and this is exactly what you shouldn't do because mathematically it sounds crazy, right? But after analyzing the whole thing, it made more sense than you wouldn't believe. Look, the first thing I want you to see is unmanaged PC, somewhat managed, moderately managed, and locked and well-managed PC. Now, we've analyzed this over the past 7 years. So we have 7 studies of these 4 bars right here. And what we've learned is that direct cost, which is the cost of the device, has gone down. But indirect cost has grown by 55%. What is indirect cost going up by 55%? It means we're managing less the devices, we're doing a poorer job at doing that, and we have more disparity, and that is the help desk or the tech support, because of labor and labor costs, has gone up. So understand, if you want to know the trends of this, 55% growth on indirect costs. Crazy. Now, what is this trend of going down? Well, the trend looks like this. Go back to the staffing ratios. This is how many devices can be managed by one administrator, okay? So 137 devices per administrator in unmanaged PC, and double in locked and well-managed. Ask me how many people are in locked and well-managed. Almost nobody. Almost nobody, okay? So 0.2%. Who is there? Very, very few companies who have very dedicated workforces in very specific job roles. Okay? Bless you. So, what do you have there? Well, it's actually everybody's almost in moderately managed PC. That's the best use cases. Many companies are there. So let's start with this. If you manage the PC, you already, PC whatever does devices. I mean as in personal computer. I don't mean Windows device, okay? So you already reduced by almost 40%. Now there's a lot of people who say, what if I go VDI? Okay. If you do VDI from unmanaged PC to unmanaged PC VDI, 2% difference. So understand, VDI by itself will provide you no TCO benefit. You don't believe me? Read the 25 articles Gartner has done on this, okay? Stop believing me. Second, if you go to any of the technology, the same thing. So in other words, if you go 39% there, and then going to something like terminal services, Citrix, RDS, or any one of these technologies, I try to say legacy and non-legacy, okay? It will give you another 3 to 5%. Not exciting enough to change anybody. Let me say this in another turn because I'd rather smack you with this one than your CEO. Let's say your budget, and this is not a joke, for IT, for the whole company, versus how much that company spends per year, this is a Harvard Business Review study, is about 1 to 3%. So IT budget is usually 1 to 3% of the total spend of a company. This is on average. If you think you're higher, I bet you money you're not higher than 5%, okay? I'm not kidding. So once you do that, if I reduce this and I say, okay, I'm going to cut the budget of desktop management because I'm going to go VDI or Thin Client or any one of these preposteries that we've said through the ages. And let's say that you say, I'm going to save it by half, right? So 45%. How much was your budget of that 1%? So 1% is spent, and the budget for PCs, let's say it's half, so 0.5%, and I'm going to say half of that, 0.25%. Okay? Go to the CEO, tell him, I'm going to spend all this $1 million, whatever, euros, and whatever you want in your local currency because I'm going to reduce the cost by 0.25%, and I'm going to hinder the flexibility and productivity of your people. God bless you, I don't want to be in the room with you. Okay? Stop doing that. Next, if you go to the phone, it looks like you saved money, but the phone has no corporate security. If I go to the tablet, it has no data plan. This is most of them out there. So therefore, if I add a data plan and security, I get to full environment. In other words, I get to just as expensive or more expensive than a PC. Let me say this again. The studies that we're seeing from Gartner and everybody else out there show one thing. A fully loaded tablet is as expensive or more expensive than a PC. Okay? So if you think you're saving money, God bless you, you're not. You're going to spend more money. So you just multiply your budget by more and more and more. Okay? And if you're not buying the devices and somebody else is, then your budget is getting sieved, segmented, and desegregated outside from you. Okay, so with that said, there's a whole bunch of good posts. There was a very good session by PQR this week that does a good smackdown. Got to look at that, all that. Lower TCO, the only way to achieve it is manage better. Okay? Understand, that's the only thing that we've proven over the past 15 years. The better you manage it, the lower this is going to be. Now, there's a whole bunch of good articles here that you can look, and I pointed at the old PQR studies here. The new ones were presented this week, so look at that. They're pretty good guys, pretty interesting company. And now let's just look at the last couple of slides really fast, because I've already said all this. Number one, segment your workforce. Number two, understand your portfolio services to those workforce. Number three, assess the impact, understand what you're going to deliver to them, et cetera, et cetera. You get all this. I'm not saying anything magical. But let me tell you something. You have to start by assessing what you got to protect. And you have to understand that what you have to protect is about 2%, not 98%, okay? The really big problem is how do you detect where this 2% is at? So that's the right problem to go solve. I'm not trying to make your life easier. I'm trying to tell you where to look and where not to look, okay, based on experience. Now, this is a big slide. It summarizes a whole bunch of the conversation. But I want you to see here that if you look at this circles in the center, those are the right topics for you to have in any type of flexible work style, of flexible services, flexible mobile, whatever you want to call it, environment, okay? So your project plan should include a policy and legal impact, vendor contractual changes, employee benefit changes, infrastructure, security policy, support process. Support process, like I'm going to say in a minute, is one of the most important ones that get forgotten all the time. Application changes, data availability, and financial impact. I hope I didn't make this easy for you. I hope I showed you what is the complexity, and then, you know what? As professionals, we can go out and do this correctly. But building a building is not easy, right? And yet again, there's good companies out there with good people that go do an amazing job at it. Now you see my point? So I'm not trying to tell you this is going to be easy. It ain't. But we can definitely do it correctly. The next one is simple. We provide a whole bunch of intellectual property on how to do this. Profiles, personas. Don't get me wrong, please. There is a tone of humility in my voice. But we've had 30 years of work on this. Give us some credit. Go reuse our intellectual property. Work with us. We have a ton of stuff to give out for free and for contractual and with services and with partners. We have a ton to give out. Give us a shot. I'm not kidding. We know more about this and we've done more about this than most companies have started to think about. Okay? And with that said, there's a ton of technologies that you can use from us. But let me go faster because I'm running out of time. Let me show you a couple of examples. It all started with this example. We started showing this one. I'm not going to go deep into this one. But because we started showing the Microsoft IT example, there were a ton of people who started doing their own. And I'm going to show you what that ended up being, okay? So I'm going to put this one up so that you see the example that we started giving. And then I'll show you the two other companies and how they approach the same problem. Is that okay? And with that, we'll finish. So Microsoft IT is a huge environment, super complex. And as you can see, it has a lot of devices. Now, by the way, this is completely outdated. It's Windows 8 devices. I apologize for that. I'll update that, okay? Just, I know somebody caught that and we're going to blog about it, okay? My typo, I apologize. Understand, look at this in a piece-by-piece segment. Don't try to read the whole thing. This is actually quite brilliant. It says, if you get a Microsoft IT standard PC, then you get support for hardware, which means if I come here to Madrid and I lose my power supply, the office in Madrid is going to have a power supply for me waiting, okay? Because it's a standard one. But if I go and get a PC without a TPM chip, best effort, if I get any other type of PC on the whitelist, they're not going to have it, okay? If I bring my own whatever, they're not even going to try. If I do software support, yes, for most. If I do line of business application, yes. Patching, yes. Driver support for Microsoft IT images, yes. BitLocker, which is encryption on the hard drive, yes, but no for PCs that don't have a TPM chip. Direct access, yes. VPN, Wi-Fi, Exchange, corporate access link. If I start moving to the non-domain joined devices, which we have, understand we have a ton of developers, this is obvious, you get here a whole bunch of nodes. And if you get to the mobile phones, you get a whole bunch of nodes in the sense that we only support what you need and you want, which is email calendaring and mobile files, because that's all you wanted anyways. Now, the first guy we saw that followed this idea was they did exactly the same thing, but they said from 2013 to 2014, we're going to enable this, but we're going to do it in digestible chunks. So it's exactly the same matrix, but you're seeing it in project format, okay? And just to finish up, if you look at this one, this is just as brilliant. This is a manufacturing and research company. But what they did, and look, there's Linux there and there's iOS. There's a whole bunch of devices. I want you to see the myriad of ecosystem that we're showing here. But understand, this is the brilliant way to look at it. So they created their device profiles that doesn't have an inference on the profiles per se. And obviously, it gives you a very interesting idea of how they're managing the different environments. I love this. The contractor is a Windows to go as well as the commercial. You see? So bring whatever you want, but you boot out of a Windows to go USB stick. There's many ways to solve this problem. There's a lot of them who are very creative. Okay? I'm not recommending one over the other. I'm just trying to tell you, don't solve everything with one tool. Don't try to do one thing for everything. It doesn't work. And last but not least, forget about the work style strategy. It's about saying yes. And it's about saying yes to all this responsibly. Is that fair? With that said, I really hope this was useful. There's a ton of resources that we can provide to you, a ton. Whether it be calculators, toolkits, services, accelerators, etc., guidance. And let me go to the most beautiful slide of every single one. There you go. Guys, and that's not because it's where you evaluate, it's because where I say thank you to you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your investment. Thank you for coming to this conference and spending time with us. Thank you for your attention. It is my pleasure to be here with you.